Something unprecedented is unfolding in Washington, and most Americans might not fully grasp how significant it is. The House Democrats have just launched a formal impeachment effort against Attorney General Pam Bondi. The reason? Her handling of sensitive files connected to Jeffrey Epstein files that many now say were deliberately withheld from scrutiny. This isn't just a political squabble, it raises a fundamental question about accountability at the highest levels of the Justice Department. If the nation's top law enforcement official can avoid scrutiny in matters of public trust, then what does that say about the system itself? And if you stay with me, you'll see why this isn't just about Pam Bondi or even about Epstein. There's a single insight here that changes how we think about political accountability in America, one that will become clear by the end of this discussion. In the past week, the story has accelerated. Investigations and news reports have brought new attention to documents linked to Jeffrey Epstein that were never released to the public. Democrats argue that the Attorney General either misled Congress or failed to ensure that justice was served impartially. This story matters right now because it speaks to a wider problem. How independent are our top law enforcement officials from political influence? How often do conflicts of interest shape decisions in ways the public never sees? The Justice Department has enormous power. Decisions made here affect investigations into high-profile figures, corporate misconduct, and even national security matters. When there's a perception of secrecy or selective enforcement, public trust erodes quickly. And this isn't just an isolated allegation. Multiple credible news outlets have reported on the sequence of events that led to the impeachment effort. The timing is also key. The political landscape is tense, investigations into other prominent figures are ongoing, and public scrutiny is higher than it's been in years. Now let's break down exactly what happened. The impeachment effort began after a series of revelations suggesting that critical files connected to Jeffrey Epstein were not fully disclosed to Congress. Lawmakers believe this could constitute obstruction or a breach of public trust. Democrats filed a formal motion outlining the reasons why they believe Bondi's actions warrant impeachment. They argue that withholding these documents could have prevented crucial information from influencing ongoing investigations. Supporters of Bondi argue that her decisions were within the bounds of legal discretion. They contend that there was no malicious intent and that the files were handled in accordance with department procedures. But here's the part almost nobody is talking about. This debate isn't just about whether Bondi acted improperly. It's about whether the mechanisms designed to hold top officials accountable are actually effective when politics is involved. The situation becomes even more complex when you consider the broader political context. Epstein's network and influence touched multiple high-profile figures, and scrutiny of how justice was applied has enormous implications. Now this is where the story takes an unexpected turn. The impeachment effort isn't guaranteed to succeed. Even if it moves forward, it could face procedural hurdles in Congress. But the fact that it's happening at all sends a signal. Top officials can no longer assume that political connections will shield them from consequences, and what happened next changed the entire calculation. Across the political spectrum, lawmakers are watching closely. Some see this as a precedent for future oversight, a reminder that elected representatives can step in when there is potential misconduct at the highest levels of the Justice Department. Others worry that the move could politicize law enforcement in dangerous ways, making it harder to trust investigations as impartial. This story also matters strategically. It highlights how public perception and media scrutiny can influence legal and political outcomes. In an era where trust in institutions is already fragile, every action or inaction by top officials has ripple effects across the country. Consider the international angle as well. U.S. credibility in law enforcement and anti-corruption measures is scrutinized globally. Actions taken here can affect diplomatic relationships, negotiations, and how other nations view the rule of law in America. And the implications don't stop there. Politically, this sets the stage for upcoming elections. Accountability debates like this often become central talking points during campaigns, shaping narratives about integrity, fairness, and governance. Now, let's connect this to the bigger picture. What we're seeing isn't just a vote or an investigation, it's a signal that Americans are increasingly unwilling to accept opacity from those in power. The impeachment effort represents both a challenge and a test, a challenge to entrenched authority, and a test of whether institutions designed to maintain checks and balances can function effectively in a hyper-political environment. So the key insight is this isn't merely about Pam Bondi or the Epstein files. It's about accountability in a system where political, legal, and public pressures intersect. How the process unfolds now could set precedents for decades, influencing how future officials operate and how the public perceives justice. If you want to understand U.S. politics beyond the headlines, this is exactly the kind of story that matters. It's a lens into the mechanisms of power, the limits of oversight, and the stakes of transparency. Think about it: every step, every motion in Congress, every public statement adds a layer to the narrative, and by following these developments, you get a clearer picture of who truly holds power and how it's exercised. If you're following these developments closely, consider subscribing. Videos like this are designed to provide clear, independent analysis without the noise of partisan commentary. And here's something to think about: what do you believe is the right balance between political oversight and executive discretion in law enforcement? Drop your answer in the comments. Finally, if you know someone who is trying to make sense of current political events, share this video with them. Stories like this matter, not just for what happens today, but for how we understand accountability tomorrow. Because in the end, understanding these mechanisms gives you the power to follow politics intelligently and to see beyond the surface of headlines that often only tell part of the story.